Welcome to the Women Money Business Podcast. Today I'm here with Claire Burns from Wurkplace Wellbeing. Thank you for joining me today, Claire. Really excited to sort of talk to you about what you do and why you do it. Would you mind letting the listeners know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Claire Burns. I'm a health and wellbeing consultant focused in the corporate space. So I founded a company called Wurkplace Wellbeing just over 7 years ago now. It is a massive area of passion for me. I started my career in HR 17, 18 years ago. And through that experience, I was very lucky to work with some amazing brands. But ultimately, that's really where it sparked my interest, because I saw very much what happened when wellbeing was supported in the workplace versus when also not so well supported as well. So for me, that was a big driver in terms of getting into that space, and also the positive impacts you can have, when you actually support people with their wellbeing and how that can play out for them personally as an individual, but also then how that can support a business as well in terms of their operations.
And then in terms of sort of touching on with you saying that you've seen where they are supported in the workplace versus when they're not supported in the workplace. When they're not supported in the workplace in terms of wellbeing, what does that tend to look like?
Yeah, you tend to see, in the individual themselves, you tend to see their thoughts, feelings, and behaviours maybe transitioning into more negative ways. So where you may have had a very happy, engaged employee, what you may see is an employee who starts to withdraw, the feelings that they may have, where you may see lower mood, less engaged with the workplace as well, and not being happier being in that environment. That can also play out further as well into terms of how they perform. So they may have once been a very strong performer within your workplace. That can start to change. We can see that in levels of attendance at work as well. So we can start to see that manifesting in certain different ways. But very much you see, whilst we don't have that profile of what that person can look like, what the key indicator is a change for someone. So what's not normal for them can then start to play out in their thoughts, feelings, and behaviours within the workplace as well.
And how do you then differentiate between that? Is it a workplace problem, or is it a personal life problem, or is it a combination of the two?
Yeah, I think a big part of doing that is having those holistic conversations. And I think it's, an employer who demonstrates that best practice with wellbeing in the workplace is open to those conversations, whether it's a personal matter that they feel comfortable to be able to bring into work, I think is very important. And likewise, that we provide that safety in that environment, that if there is something triggering that or contributing to those sort of negative impacts to those individuals within the workplace, that actually that is a safe space for that individual to bring that forward as well. But a big part of that is shaping the right culture towards well-being, that it's not a tick box exercise, and that actually it is embedded in our day-to-day, in our practices. We see it, that behavior role modeled in leadership populations as well, and it's not, as we say, just that tick box exercise.
And I think when you hear the term well-being, like my immediate thought, and it's maybe because I'm in healthcare, I think healthcare in terms of well-being, like internal well-being. But then from what you're explaining, it's more, correct me if I'm wrong, it's more sort of the mindset as well as sort of the feelings that they're feeling, not necessarily nutritional well-being, not sort of health related. Well, I suppose it does affect your health if you're mentally sort of struggling and emotionally struggling, but it's different to sort of the well-being that I would understand. And I think there has been a shift in I think companies, businesses where there is more well-being presence, but I think you're quite right in saying, in terms of that tick box exercise, I think some organizations do just see it as, we need to have a well-being lecture because we need to be seen as being catering to all kinds of employees. Yeah, that's it. And in terms of, obviously you own Wurkplace Wellbeing, that's your business. And how did that happen? Did you always know that you wanted to have your own business? Did that, what was that journey like?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I've always known I wanted to own my own thing and do my own thing. I think, even if you can speak to my family, I always used to say, even as a little girl, I'm going to have my own business one day. And I think that's always been a driver and a passion for me. For me, getting into that paid employment, so to speak, was important to gain that experience and to really understand actually where do I want to, sort of develop my own thing. And through that experience in the workplace, I think, well-being was something that just really stood out for me. Also as well, sort of 7-8 years ago, prior to COVID, and I think all the difficulties that came out as a result of that as well, well-being was quite relatively a new thing as well, a new concept. And and what we see year on year is the investment in it. We're actually seeing budgets allocated to it now as well from a workplace perspective. So in terms of me getting into that, I think it's always been a passion area. It's always been something that I knew I wanted to develop something for myself. I'm a big advocate as well of, we spend a lot of time at work. And you have to create a work environment for you that fits your needs. And I always knew that whilst I enjoyed the nature of the work I did, I never felt comfortable working for someone else.
Right.
And I know, and then I meet other people, who will say to me, oh my goodness, I can't believe you have your own business. I would hate to do that. I would hate, sort of the responsibilities, etc. And some of the challenges, as we both probably know, that can come alongside that as well. So, and that's a big part for me about that workplace wellbeing, is creating that working pattern, that working environment that fuels your needs and that actually makes you happy, and that you're working in a way that supports your overall well-being as well. Because if we think of how long we spend at work, it's a long time to not be happy in the way that you're working as well.
And have you so obviously I know that you said it's a passion area of yours, but then have you sort of been subject to a workplace where wellbeing hasn't been prioritized, do you know, like, has that sort of driven that passion because of what you've experienced?
Most definitely. I think very, very early in my career, I was working alongside a manager, which, I think when I reflect back now, I realise how toxic that environment was. And it wasn't just towards me, it was their management style, and it was felt across the team. But for me, that really made me realise how work can be one of two things. Work can be something that absolutely supports your mental health and well-being and can boost it in such positive ways. But work is also something that can significantly take away from the quality of that as well. And that also has been a big driver for me. That line manager who I had at the time would be someone that made me dread work, going to work the next day, would make me dread the Sunday evenings, would make me sort of like withdraw, not want to put myself forward at work, and would do basically anything I could to minimize the interactions I had with them. But actually, when you look at that, no one should go to work and feel like that. And that again has been a big driver as well, is that I think as you say, the work environment they have, the way that you work, making sure it's something that fuels you and not drains you. And I think that's a really fine balance, because when we look, we get so many positive benefits from work. When we think about the social aspect, it provides us with purpose, routine, opportunity for achievement. It also provides us with the income to then go and do things that we want to outside of work that make us happy as well. So work isn't this thing to dread. It's not something that's bad and that we shouldn't want to engage in it. It's just about finding you're a unique individual, what works for you, and then cultivating that working environment. And that is where then it doesn't feel like work then. It feels like passion, and it's something that you want to be involved in and included in.
And like you said that you were in that role where you were dreading going to work on for that Monday morning feeling.
Yeah.
Why did you not leave that situation? Like, well, obviously I assume you did leave that situation, but how long did you go before thinking I can't do this, and what were your barriers to not do it sooner?
Yeah, I think probably, well, it was a good year and a half.
Okay.
I think one of the certain barriers was it was very normalized around us as well, which I think made that very difficult, because actually there was, you would, if you were lucky enough to speak to a colleague where you'd both had a similar incident with that individual, then you would start to share your feelings about that. But again, I think when this was way earlier back in my career, it wasn't sort of promoted, that well-being aspect, and that actually looking at the impact of people around you, that psychological safety wasn't something that was promoted. And also as well, I think we've had a positive shift that we're seeing in the workplace as well, is that just because something's always been done that way, it doesn't mean it's right. You know, and I think I was up against a very old school mentality. It was a very male dominated environment where people had service years of, 35 years service. And it's like, well, this is the way we've always done it. And what we need to realize is that doesn't mean that moving forward, that's the right way that we should move it forward as well. And I think that took a lot of confidence as a young person going into the workplace. When that environment is normalized, that takes a lot of courage to then stand up and say, but this isn't an environment that I want my working career to be in. Because I did get to that point where I just thought, no, that I'm not living my life this way, where I am having dread all week, dread all weekend, and then the cycle starts again. I just feel like life was way too short to experience those feelings. And that's really where it took time and it took a lot of courage, but I just thought, no, I'm not prepared to do this anymore.
And the funny thing is, I suppose what we put up with back then is not what the next generation will put up with now. And I've been looking at sort of research and stuff on like Gen X, Gen Z, whichever generation we're on, Alpha, who knows anymore.
Well, then I have to admit my age as well then. So I'm like, oh no, I want to be in this gen now because I want to say that I'm this age.
But I think like we're probably from a similar generation where you were sort of brought up that this is what you do, you've got to, this is what happens, and you've got to be the underling basically and prove yourself or prove your worth. And deal with everything that's coming at you, because you couldn't possibly have any ideas of any worth that could be, looking to improve a system, because you don't know because of your age. Whereas like back, like now, like Gen Z, Gen X, Gen whatever, they're very much like, it's quite refreshing to see. And I just think if we had that mindset when we were younger, where would we be now? Where they don't tolerate like what we would tolerate. They just, if they don't like it, they're just like, I don't like it, so I'm off, and I think they're very much more entrepreneurial, that they believe in their own opinions, views, and obviously you need to believe in your opinions and views, but they believe it enough to actually express it and not be scared to think like, well, I can't say that to so and so at work because I might lose my job. And I think like back when we were sort of starting our working life, it was very much like you just sort of, whatever they say, whether it's good or bad, you just sort of go, yeah, I understand, I won't do that again. And it's almost, it's oppression in a way. It's having a level of respect from our end, but at the same time, you're not allowed to flourish. You're not allowed to explore your ideas, because like you say, like they're saying to you, we've always done it this way, so who are you to come and tell us that it's not that way anymore? And I think what's nice is to see this next generation with the pros are that they're not willing to accept what we would accept, but there's also cons to what the next generation are doing, and it's finding that balance, like you say, between it, because work is so important in terms of not just monetary value, but like you say, that social connection, and that having that camaraderie, that team, and that sort of work family really. And I think you can't put a price on that. It's a feeling, isn't it? It's a feeling that you feel. I think it's difficult to try and sort of like bottle that up and say this is what it looks like, because you can't explain it. It's just how you feel. But it's the feeling that when you wake up on a Monday morning, you think, I've got work. Yeah, it's fine. It's Monday, but it's fine. It could be worse. I could be going to a job that I really dread. And I think people are having more confidence to not put up with as much, not just at that Gen X, Gen Z level, but just in general. I think that's because people are sharing things like you're sharing, and there's that promotion of these sort of ideologies and sort of ethos really of a workplace. The person isn't just a number. They're a person with feelings, and like, not everyone fits in that box and that mold. So I see that, I suppose you've probably seen that complete sort of transition over your sort of working life, when it was such a struggle to get work, like well-being into the workplace. And now I'm sure people are calling out for you, like, Claire, come and talk to us about it and things like that.
Yeah. I think a big part as well is that when I started out in sort of working career as well, I think, entrepreneurs seemed like, oh, that wouldn't be you. That's just for certain people
Yeah.
that would be an entrepreneur and start their own business as well. And I think that's now been a lot more normalized, that actually it's an option. Whereas I think when I think back at school, like it was about, get a safe job for life, and it's job, this, and it was almost like, I know that the manager might not speak to you really well, but you get a really good pension with this, and and it's all these elements. It's almost like it was expected that that was okay just because you got these benefits and this, that, and the other. Whereas what I and certainly will be instilling in my children as well is that, to own your own business, to be that entrepreneur, that is as a valid a route into
Yeah.
your world of work as going and being employed by someone. And the thing is, a big part of this is it's a choice. Like,
Yeah.
whereas I felt like it was when I was younger, it was almost like you were sort of like pushed into that direction of you just need a job and you need the security and you need to do this. Whereas now it's very much about, and as you say, sort of picking up on those points there, it's about actually you're going to spend a long time working. What you need to do is find something that fuels you. So whether it's the field that you're working in, whether it's the way that you work in that field, you need to find something that basically supports your well-being, because we all need to work.
Mm.
But what we've got a choice over now is where we work, how we work, and how, and actually how that work makes us feel as well. It's not something we just have to survive Monday to Friday.
Yeah.
It is something that can be very, very beneficial for us. And often what we can see sometimes is then the flip side of that, where people work too much, and
Yeah.
then we see the negative impacts of that as well. But the key thing is just finding that you are a unique person. Someone may go down paid employment, work within, I don't know, the field of law, and that's their dream. And that's
Yeah.
amazing that they've found something that makes them feel that way. And I
Yeah.
think that's really important when it comes to the well-being in the workplace is if something doesn't feel right, if it's not a passion, if it's not fueling you, it's about thinking, is this something I could change?
Yeah.
Do I want to be feeling like this every day when I'm turning up to work and, not feeling satisfied? And there will be times, and we've all had them, where some jobs are a means to an end,
Yeah.
where we have to do them. And the reality is we all have mortgages to pay, and that's
Yeah.
absolutely fine. And that's okay to have those jobs. But what we've also got to be thinking of is the long-term plan. Is it that's where we want to stay, or do we want to keep ourselves moving in a direction that leads us towards our goals as well? So it is that balancing act, but it's
Yeah.
about never just being satisfied and it making do. For me, it's about people wanting to thrive and feel that they get that fuel and that drive from work as well.
And I think, like you touched on a sort of on the going to the opposite end of the spectrum, where you sort of can't find that work-life balance. And I think for me, I think social media's got a lot to answer for, especially I'd say probably about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where all I was seeing on like my feed and stuff was just like, if you don't wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and
Yeah.
do this and this, you're going to be a failure. You're going to fail at life. You're not going to be able to do anything,
Yeah.
and that can have quite a profound effect on people's mental well-being and feeling of failure. Like you just feel like, well, I'm a failure then if I can't wake up at 5 in the morning and complete my day by 6 o'clock a.m. I'm a failure. And that's that hustle culture. And I think people are now realizing, or more attuned to know or think about the fact that, you know what, just because I don't wake up at 5 o'clock doesn't mean I'm going to, fail in my life. It's just prioritizing what works for you, really, because everybody's different, and some people might, and if I had to wake up at 5 in the morning, I'd be good for nobody by 7 o'clock in the morning. That would be it for me. That would be, I will be done. Whereas if I wake up at my normal time, I'm energized. But then the power of social media on your well-being, I think, is profound. And we spend so much time. We spend so much time on our devices, and even if you don't want to be seeing things, it's the algorithm just shows you these things. And I think, again, we don't always quantify the impact that's having on us without us even realizing, because you're not even trying to character assassinate yourself. Your phone's doing it for you, and you're like, right, okay. And I know that you talk about sort of success without sacrifice, and I thought that's quite key in terms of talking about that hustle culture and with your sort of framing of success without sacrifice. So could you talk to me more about that and what?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, that is a big passion area for me as well, is, finding again the field that you want to work in, the way that you want to work, but then again, also making sure that you're getting that the way that your life and your work come together is very, very important, because ultimately, we're not just designed to wake up, work, eat and sleep, and just keep repeating that cycle as well. There is the element of that life away from work, and that, that our whole identity isn't just work. And then really as well, it's important that we do recognize that we are different, when we are individuals, because you may have some people who want to chase the work-life balance, where things fit into very clear boxes. I log off at 5 and that is it. I do this, that is it. And then I will log back on at 9 in the morning. My weekends are my own. And that is how I want my life to lead. And, very sort of neat sections in terms of how we'll do that.
Yeah.
You've then got people like, for example, like myself, that don't necessarily chase that balance. So it's not about those equal splits for me. For me, it's more about that work-life integration.
Right.
So it's about working in a way where my personal life and my professional life can come together in a way that doesn't drain me. It fuels me. So yes. So for example, later today, I am having a Pilates class in the middle of the day. Because that will allow me to do that. And then later this evening, I will take an hour back this evening when my children have gone to bed, and I will do those emails. But for me, that works for me, because that's the way that, that's the way that it fuels me. And and a really key point of that again is finding that balance. So whether it's the balance or the integration that you're after, but it's finding a way of working that supports your well-being. So actually, even if I do send that email, those emails 7:30 till 8:30 tonight, when my children get in from 4, for me, 4 till 6 is ring fenced for them, and I will spend that time, but I'll be present in that time because I know I've got that hour later. And I think it is, yes, with work-life integration, I think it does require a real level of discipline to make sure that things aren't bleeding over too much one into the other. But with the nature of my business, which I'm sure you'll find from yours as well, is that I may get an email later on at night, but that's fine to answer that, because I haven't been sat at my desk from 7 consistently that morning. So I can afford to do that later on. And also, it doesn't make me feel stressed. It's something where actually trying to do it when my children have come in from school for 2 hours makes me feel more stressed because I've got, Mum, I need this, Mum, I need that, where's my tea, what are we doing for that? And that's the thing that stresses me out. Whereas if I can ring fence that hour later of quiet time and I can do it, then that makes me happy because I've ticked off what I need to do and I haven't felt stressed in the process. It is about that. We're so individual, and where some people would hate that, some people are like, I want to be employed 9 till 5, I switch off and that's it.
Fine,
There's no right or wrong way. It's about what supports your well-being and what works for your personal circumstances. We've all got different lives outside of work and different demands and needs, etc. And it's like with you saying the 5 a.m. I know a number of my clients will get up at that time because what they say is it makes them feel like they're ahead, because by the time they get to 7, they're like, I'm done. I am done for the day. My energy has gone and I want to just relax. I don't want to answer any emails. And so a big part of that is working with your energy. You're like, when are you your most productive? Have your deep focus time when you're most productive. That might be your 5 a.m. for one person, or someone's 7:30 at night for someone else, or for someone else, the 9 to 5 schedule. It is so important to just find out. I think the moment we try and copy others, we're setting ourselves up for failure. And I've done it. I've been guilty of it. Like, the 5 a.m. club. Wow. By 6:30, 7 o'clock, as you say, I am not functioning. I'm off the plot. And I think it is so much about, it's like with anything in life, if you just try and do a copy and paste into your life, it's never going to work, because there's always unique factors that you need to take into account as well. And I think once you nail that, that is when work will feel, good for you, because you're working in a way with your energy, your time, your demands, and in a way that works for your family and your life as well.
It's bespoke. It's personal to you, isn't it? At the end of the day. Yeah, like you say. But I think in the digital age, you do compare, you do look at other people's lives, and unfortunately, it's just natural to do that. But you can sort of go down a big rabbit hole with that. And I think it's just being aware that you're not that person, you're different, and play to your strengths, like you say. When are you most productive? Are you productive at 10 o'clock at night? If so, that's fine. You do that. Me and my husband are very different, so I almost come into my own from 8 p.m. onwards, between 8 and 11 p.m.
Yeah.
Wired, switched on, like was productive. Whereas from after he's eating his food, he's good for nobody.
Yeah.
He's just sat there like falling asleep, and I'm like, "Come on, listen." And he was just like, "I can't." He's like, "I don't know how you've got this much energy at this time of an evening, but I'm not a morning person." So like you say, it's different for each person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sort of thinking about sort of your journey as a female then, Claire, in sort of your entrepreneurial world, and obviously the area that you work in terms of well-being, I would consider like an emotional area. And I know that as females, we're sort of conditioned to be more emotionally intelligent. How did you navigate that space as a female business owner going into workplace well-being? How was that journey?
So, I think it's something that, I think at times where you question yourself, I think,
Yeah.
naturally you do that. I think also as well with being a mum, to three girls, I think that's something where, you have the mum guilt that comes in
Yeah.
quite a lot, in terms of that. But what I also navigated for myself was I realized that I am a happier person since being on my own boss and actually being able to do the things the way that I want to do things. So that's been a big part of my journey, is that acceptance of actually this is what's going to make you show up to be a better person in other areas of your life if your needs are being met this way as well. So there are, sometimes there are balancing acts. I'll take my daughters to gymnastics. That I can't necessarily sit and watch them because it doesn't permit for that. But then I'll do a couple of work emails while I'm sat in the car, and it is about that sort of balancing act. It can be that when it comes to motherhood.
Yeah.
But again, I've always kept in my mind, and there are challenging days with running the business. I think there always will be, but I always know that the paid employment route would never fit my needs. And it would be something that if I then ever decided to walk away from this and go into that, I just know wouldn't work for me. And that would make me an unhappier person. So yes, I have the mum guilt. Sometimes there's the imposter syndrome. There are some amazing people in the wellbeing space out there as well. And as you say, social media can sometimes add to that element of comparison. But for me, a big part of that is recognizing this is a passion area. I've done well so far to this day. Keep that in your mind as well, that, I have got those existing clients that have been with me the whole of my journey with my business as well. And I think it's just keeping that belief in yourself and realizing that this is your fuel. This is what you've always wanted to do, and keeping that at the forefront as well in sort of my working career and how I run the business.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting what you've said there in terms of the juggling mom life with business life, and then obviously curveballs in business, because let's be honest, it's never straightforward. And somebody could be looking at your life on social media thinking, look at her, like she's got it all. She's got 3 children, she's got a business, she works when she wants, she goes to Pilates in the afternoon. But then that's what they're seeing. But then behind the scenes, there are those things that go wrong. And I think people often, because of the social media world, don't often realise that there is a downside to it as well. And they just see sort of the glamorous side of it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I suppose it's just being aware for people sort of that are looking on social media, comparing their lives to others. Nobody's life is perfect, and you just so often just seeing the highlight reel, and there's so much else going on behind it. And I wanted to ask, Claire, I saw a post on your LinkedIn recently about a message that you sent. You were thinking, should I send it or not? But it's kind of changed your career in a certain way to Zara. Would you mind telling me a little bit about what happened then and what were you thinking? What made you do it?
I think it's same thing again, like the imposter syndrome gets in. And I think the world of LinkedIn's changing, and I think, recognizing that as well. But I think back then I just started out as a mental health first aid England instructor. Again, that comparison, am I going to be good enough? Are they going to want this? and ultimately it was just plucking up that courage that day and saying, what is the worst that can happen?
Yeah, exactly.
If I send a message, if they don't want to engage with me and the wellbeing piece and the training, etc., then so be it. That will be the outcome of that. And I think in those early days, I think you're right, is that it's really not glamorous at all. You question whether you've done the right thing. You question, what if I don't get any leads? What if I don't have any existing clients? But that was an example that day, and that's where I really wanted to share on LinkedIn that day, that actually that one DM started a relationship that I've maintained with Zara as a client now for, coming up to 7 years. And it's
Wow,
been
that's
so,
amazing.
so important. And it was literally sent the message and I got, a reply back within that day saying, well, can you get to London tomorrow? I had 2 children at home at the time. I live in Doncaster. Getting to King's Cross Station is not cheap or easy. And then I'm thinking, oh my God, I've got childcare to sort, I've got this. But it would have been so easy to talk myself out of it. But I thought, no, this is what you've built the business for. So thank goodness for grandparents. Got on that train and I got myself down there. And it could have absolutely not worked out at all, but it did, and it paid off. And it's something that I'm so forever grateful, obviously, for the opportunity that I've been given, but also the fact of the belief. We will have to take risks in life. Work does come with those elements of risk, especially when, running your own business. Some pay off. I've had plenty of experience where they have. I've also had experiences where they haven't. But
Yeah.
even those where I haven't necessarily won those situations and they've not
Yeah.
gone to plan, it's always a learning curve, and it's always like, well, let's reflect on it. What could I have done better? Maybe where is it been price point? Has it been positioning? Has it been understanding of their business? But it's all learning. And, you'll know as well, with business, you get some wins, some losses, but
Exactly.
it's more about the resilience of how you get over those losses as well. And that you really make sure that actually, yes, it's not gone to plan, but what can I learn from this and how can I use that learning for next time as well? And I think,
Absolutely.
and really that message on LinkedIn that day was, you may get a no, but at least you've got a no and you've engaged with someone, rather than a, well, what might have happened? And
Yeah.
then the worst thing you can see is that someone else has gone in and taken that opportunity that could have been yours as well. So I think sometimes we're a bit too polite, and I think
Yeah.
we're a bit like, oh, well, I don't want to do this, but actually it's about chasing, it's about making sure you're putting yourself out there. And as you say, some you'll win, some you'll lose. And it's just about, keeping yourself moving forward in that positive way.
And I was really sort of glad to read that post, because I just thought it's so important for people to know, like you should say, what's the worst that can happen? That's sort of how I live my life. That's my motto in life. Like, what's the worst that can happen? They'll say no, but then I'd rather have a no and then in 10 years time think to myself, I asked them and they said no, rather than 10 years time thinking, what if I'd sent that message? What if I'd have done that? And like living life with no regrets really is sort of what I would say is really important, because it's just the message, especially like the business world. And like, people are so accessible on LinkedIn and things like that you can just speak to like CEOs, high flying people, or just, a one couple of line message, and it's up to them whether they want to read it. But you've done your bit and you've sent that message, and then you can move on with your life, But then that message for you has opened up doors that have been open for 7 years now. And I think it just shows the power of believing in yourself and just and betting on yourself and thinking, you know what, I am good enough. Like, I am going to send the message.
Yeah,
If they're not good
definitely.
enough, then that's their problem. Like I'm going to put myself forward. And like you say, once you get that yes, figure it out afterwards. Just, I always think like, just say yeah, and then be like, right, I'll have to sort everything out afterwards. Like you say, like the grandparents, the transport, how you're going to get there, what you're going to wear, all of that. But you can only make those decisions once you've got that yes, and you're right, but you can only get that yes if you ask the question. So I think that was really, really a powerful post for me to read, really.
Oh, thank you.
So no problem. So thank you so much for your time today, Claire. I really appreciate you spending some time with us to discuss your journey. And from what I've learned from this podcast episode is that we to prioritise our own well-being. That's not just health well-being, like mental well-being, and how we sort of show up at work as that person, and just to evaluate, are we happy, and what do we define as happiness, because that can differ between people. You know, like you say, you could be a 9 to 5 happy, or you could be an entrepreneur happy, and everybody's okay to be whatever level of happy that they need to be. So if people do want to connect with you, I'll pop your details in the show notes so they can connect with you.
Oh, yeah, that's
if that's okay. And thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you on the next one.